gain those attributes. So every day in that third prayer, whether we know it or not, we're expressing our gratitude to Nichiren Daishonin for this teaching and our great hope that we'll reveal Taho Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, and all the Buddhas of the universe in our own lives, in the form of the entity of Buddhahood, the spiritual attributes of the Buddha, and the physical or active attributes of the Buddha. So this is incredible, isn't it? So Buddhahood, in other words, can lead, Buddhism rather, will lead everyone to be able to reveal these three attributes if people will really make the effort to do so. This is expressed, this theory, in one Japanese term, Ishin Soku Sanjin. Ishin Soku Sanjin. Ishin means very literally one. Soku means equals or is the same as, and Sanjin means three. One Buddha, yet three, revealing all three attributes. Or the other way around, Sanjin Soku Ishin. Three attributes revealed through the one person. So Mr. Toda, in one of his lectures, explained that when we repeat the 10 factors of life in Gongyo, we are also expressing our desire to express or reveal those three attributes in our own lives. As you know, every time we recite the 10 factors, we do it 3 times. Nyoze so, nyoze sho, nyoze tai, nyoze riki. The 10 factors are the medium through which we express ourselves. They are the medium through which the three attributes will appear in the reality of our daily lives. Therefore, we repeat them 3 times, don't we? 3 times over, every time we say them. So it's good when you're repeating nyoze so, nyoze sho, nyoze tai, to remember that point. I am desiring, I want to reveal in my life the 3 attributes or properties of the Buddha, both in the very heart or entity of my life, and in my spiritual being, and in my physical and actual being. This really makes that recitation that much more meaningful. Finally, Nichiren Daishonin encourages Nanjo by talking about that peculiar habit of sticking out your tongue if you were telling the truth, which we're told in a footnote was a custom in ancient India. So if you said something and you wanted to impress the fact on somebody else that that was really true, you stuck your tongue out at them, which is the opposite of the reason why we stick our tongue out at someone these days. But anyway, that's the meaning of that passage. And he's just emphasizing in his enthusiasm to Nanjo Tokumitsu, please remember all these things. Please remember how incredibly glorious your good fortune is in having the Gonzen, and have no doubts that you can overcome all your difficulties. So we'll continue now to read the next passage which we're going to consider. When Nichiren Daishonin expresses to Nanjo Tokumitsu his own joy at his own good fortune.
I wonder what good karma I created in the past to have been born as such a person, and I am filled with joy. Shakyamuni's words, which I have mentioned above, indicate that the blessings that come from having served tens of billions of Buddhas are so great that even though one may have believed in teachings other than the Lotus Sutra, and as a result of this slander been born poor and lowly, he is still able to believe in this sutra during this lifetime. Miao Lo states, one who falls to the ground rises by pushing himself up from the ground. Those who slander the Lotus Sutra will fall to the ground of the 3 evil paths, humanity or heaven. Yet, through the help of the Lotus Sutra, they will, in the end, attain Buddhahood.
And I find this a really moving passage because, of course, I, like you, know that I have slandered in the past, not just in past lives, but in this life as well. So, as you know, slander in Buddhism means slandering directly the Gohonzon or the practice. That I didn't do, but also slandering life, hurting, harming, or destroying life. This is slander against the law of life itself. So, of course, this passage is saying, really, we're all bound to slander, and we're all bound to have slandered in the past. This is inevitable because, as he says here, our lives contain the 6 lower worlds: hell, hunger, anger, animality, and tranquility and rapture. Because of this, because these 6 lower worlds, whether we like it or not, are part of life and must be part of life, therefore, inevitably, there will be times when we slander and when we have slandered. There will be times when we have derided the true law of life and gone against it in one way or another. So, of course, Nichiren Daishonin himself had to have the karma to start practicing Buddhism in a country and in a world that knew nothing of the existence of the law of life, knew nothing of the existence of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Therefore, inevitably, he as a boy went to a temple and practiced the Nembutsu and other distorted teachings of Buddhism. Even he derided, he says this in another Gosho, the Lotus Sutra, and laughs at the fact that anyone could possibly think of gaining enlightenment through that sutra. It was inevitable. Someone has to be the first. That person, if they're an ordinary human being and not some mythical god, as an ordinary human being, through ignorance, are bound to slander. Yet, although we've all committed such slander in one form or another, this time or in past lifetimes, we, many of us here, found the Gohonzon in this life. This is the extraordinary thing. There are billions and billions of people in this world whose karma is such that they have not yet been able to find the Gohonzon. Yet, amazingly enough, though we may know in our hearts we've slandered, we actually found the Gohonzon before billions of other people. No wonder in lots of places in the Gosho, Nichiren Daishonin says how incredible it is to be born a human being and how incredible it is to find the Gohonzon, to find the true law and understand it. Yet, because again of the problem of understanding that life is eternal, we still find it difficult to embrace this good fortune, to realize it in our own minds, don't we? Yet it is unbelievable good fortune. We must have made the causes to have found the Gohonzon now before billions and billions of other people have managed to do so. It's an extraordinary thought, isn't it? And Nichiren Daishonin says here that we did so. We had this good fortune. We found the Gohonzon because the cause we've made in the past, or the causes we've made, is to have served tens of billions of Buddhas in our eternal lifetime. So I guess when you look back, if you could, over the eternity of your life, you'll find it, in a very wavy sort of graph. Sometimes up, sometimes down, sometimes serving the Buddha, sometimes slandering the Buddha. But of course, the more you serve the Buddha, the more you found your life on the belief that life itself is the most precious treasure, the more will be the up periods. The more there will be chance of creating good fortune and finding the Gohonzon in your next lifetime. So the point about us is, provided we maintain this practice now throughout this lifetime, and we don't slander it, and we don't go taiten, and we keep chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo to the very moment of our death, then of course we will born again with the Gohonzon in our next life. And so it may go on in lifetime after lifetime. But the important point in all this is that we're bound to have slandered. Anyone who thinks they've never slandered, I'm sorry to say so, but they're nothing else but a fool. And they're foolish because unless they can bring themselves to really see that they have slandered, and that's why they're having such bad effects of manifesting in their lives, they'll never be able to really feel that deep regret, which is Zange, and open their lives up to that fact, and through that actually change their karma. So to realize one must have slandered is very important to every single one of us. So whichever way we look at it, the negative force of life exists in us. It's there, poised, ready to rush in the moment the positive side of life begins to weaken. There isn't a gap. There isn't a time when the negative force is saying, well, shall I dive in here or shan't I? It doesn't hesitate. It doesn't weigh up anything, any pros or cons. If the positive force of life drops, the negative is in there like a bomb. So it's our choice, isn't it? How we live. And this is why Nichiren Daishonin quotes from Yolo, one who falls to the ground rises by pushing himself up from the ground. Nobody else in the world can help us do it. Of course, we can be helped by reading the Gosho and having the Gosho explained to us, having life explained to us, going to study meetings. But in the end, we have to push ourselves up from the ground. In other words, we have to make the causes in order to continue to earn good fortune and not go sliding down the slippery, the slimy slope into hell again. No one else can pick us up. It's entirely up to us. I think one of my most painful moments is when I hear that people who even have the Gohonzon are still slandering. Not slandering, as it were, in just a second, in a moment, but actually sitting, talking, slandering. To me, this is an absolute, it's like a knife going into me. That people can actually sit in a room with the Gohonzon and slander. Slander other members who are the Gohonzon in themselves. Slander NSUK. Slander the organization. Of course, it's not so many people do this, but I do know some people do it. And to me, this is an agony. How can people do it with the Gohonzon in their rooms? It's beyond belief to me. But it happens. And such people cannot make their lives grow. However hard they may practice to the Gohonzon, they're undoing everything by making the cause of slander. They cannot break through certain places, certain points, and find true happiness because they seem to be blind to this fact that they're committing slander. So I really ask such people to stop it, to get hold of themselves and realize their good fortune. Or I would ask other people to tell them to shut up, because every time they do it, they're making such appalling causes for their own lives. Complaining, moaning, criticizing. Not so many people. But unhappily, there are always some who are doing it. So let's help each other to stop doing it. That's the important point. Every member, every person is a Gohonzon, whether they're practicing or not. NSUK is the Buddha's organization. Every member is a child of the Buddha, if you like to put it that way. So, of course, criticism can be very important. Any group of people, in any group of people, there would be something going wrong if criticism wasn't permitted. But constructive criticism based on daimoku is very different from complaining, moaning criticism, which is cowardly and occurs in people's rooms when nobody else except that little group are listening. And the point is that they're causing themselves more agony. And this is what worries me through the inevitability of the law of cause and effect. So if we disagree with something, we must speak out. We should go to the Gohonzon, chant daimoku, and make sure that what we disagree with is really correct and isn't just based on some strong emotion. And having checked it with daimoku, it's our solemn duty to the Gohonzon to speak out. But sitting in corners, complaining and criticizing and slandering is terrible. And only those people themselves are going to suffer. Right.
Now, since you, Ueno Shichiro Jiro, are a common mortal in the latter day of the law, and were born into a warrior family, you should by rights be called an evil man, and yet your heart is that of a good man.
That's an interesting little paragraph, because it's saying that we really cannot judge anybody of our own accord. There was Nanja Tokimitsu, a warrior trained in all the arts of a warrior, master by that young age of a samurai family. Shijo Kingo was the same. Yet these people's hearts, the shape of their lives was great, because they were followers of Nichiren Daishonin and they received the Gohonzon. So in the future, we may find people in the forces who are practicing. We may find people in the nuclear department of the Ministry of Defense who are practicing. We may find politicians who are tub-thumping about keeping our nuclear strength, who in fact, if we only but knew it, had the potential within them to be shakabuku'd next week. We cannot make judgment. And this is what we tend to do, of course. Especially in our shakabuku, we tend to look at everybody and say, well, that person will never practice. It's not worth talking to them. That person may do. This is ridiculous. And this is why Sensei said, talk about Buddhism wherever you go, whether or not people listen to what you say. Because you nor I will never be able to judge who will actually accept it and start practicing and who will not. It's a really important point, isn't it, concerning Shakabuku. So, of course, equally, we cannot judge because there are two types of people who help the great movement for Kosen Rufu. One, of course, are those people who actually practice. And the other are those people who support those who practice, yet do not practice themselves. So, for instance, when he was in Holland a few days ago, Sensei was able to spend an hour having a real heart-to-heart talk with the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. The Prime Minister of the Netherlands doesn't practice. But through that hour's talk, Sensei really felt a great friendship had been established between them. And especially he felt that because the Prime Minister of the Netherlands' own personal principles regarding life were very similar to Buddhism. And he could relate to everything that Sensei said very easily. So such a person is important for the future movement of Kosen Rufu. Even it may be important that he never does practice. If a politician, for example, who was holding a high position, practiced this Buddhism, he would be accused by his fellow politicians of being biased. But if he doesn't practice yet strongly supports, then he can talk from a neutral point of view, and he will not be under suspicion. So such people who support yet do not practice to the Gohonzon are actually on the Gohonzon. The character for Fugen on the Gohonzon represents such people. Also, such people are said to contain the protective force of Bonten and Taishoku. So what I'm emphasizing and what Nichiren Daishonin is pointing out in this passage is that these matters are very deep. We can't make judgment ourselves. We have to keep an open mind, and we can do that by just realizing that everybody is the Gohonzon. Everyone has the Buddha state, whether they're actually making use of it or not, and doing our utmost to treat everybody equally, and everyone with equal compassion. Okay, John.
I say this for a reason. Everyone from the ruler on down to the common people refuses to take faith in my teachings. They inflict harm on the few who do embrace them, heavily taxing or confiscating their estates and fields, or even in some cases putting them to death. So it is a difficult thing to believe in my teachings, and yet both your mother and your deceased father dared to accept them. Now you have succeeded your father as his heir, and without any persuasion from others, you too have wholeheartedly embraced these teachings. Many people, both high and low in rank, have reprimanded or threatened you, but you have refused to give up your faith. Now that you appear certain to attain Buddhahood, the devil of the sixth heaven and other demons are trying to use this illness to intimidate you. But remember that life in this world is limited. Never allow yourself to be intimidated.
Thank you. So here's another area where Nichiren Daishonin is pointing out to us that we cannot make judgment. Nanjo Tokimitsu was desperately ill. It's very easy. We wouldn't probably say it out loud, but it's very easy to say when we see someone else has got a go flu or something or other, oh, that means they're not chanting enough Daimoku. But of course that's ridiculous. It could be true, it could be so, that they let their life force drop and therefore caught a flu bug. But equally, it may not be so at all. So again, we must try to avoid making judgment. And remember, cause and effect, so far as these matters are concerned, applies both in thought, words, and actions. So where we catch ourselves making judgment, we've got to try to correct ourselves, by quickly chanting a few daimoku inside us, or by making sure that next time we're in front of the Gonzen, we really express our regret for that judgment, which of course is a form of slander. So especially in the case of those who are advancing over the years in faith, at times they will go through great difficulties. So of course this can be because they're not practicing properly, or they're not practicing at all. But equally, it can be exactly like Nanjo Tokimitsu, a test of faith. A period when they have to really struggle, and through that struggle become strong enough for the next phase of their lives. So we can't make judgment. Indeed, it's most dangerous to do so. Instead, therefore, anyone who is struggling and going through a difficult period, whatever happens, we should encourage them to practice and support them with our daimoku, really chant for their happiness, that they can overcome their problems and become strong. So there have been many examples in the history of the Soka Gakkai of this. Mr. Toda and Mr. Makiguchi were the only people who could stand the test of being thrown into prison at the beginning of World War II. This was an incredible trial. None of us can visualize what it must be like. Many times I've thought to myself, would I have gone on, no matter what, despite the grilling and the brainwashing of the authorities whilst I was in prison? Would I have gone on? It's important to ask oneself such a question every so often, I think. Mr. Makiguchi and Mr. Toda went on. Those farmers who were arrested during the Atsuhara persecution, none of them, it's said, had practiced more than 3 years. But they never gave in. And the 3 who were executed died chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. This, of course, is a very supreme test. If we look at Mr. Toda's life, we can see how his faith was tested on several occasions, where everything seemed to be going wrong around him. We've seen it in Sensei's life, time and time again, constantly being slandered. But he never gave in. So such tests come, and provided one continues to practice no matter what, you break through. And of course you always find that when you break through, a period of real good fortune follows. So there's a saying in the Gosho, the greatest suffering is always followed by the greatest benefit, or the greatest evil is always followed by the greatest good. But we needn't fear such things, because the protection of the Gohonzon is always there. And speaking for myself, and I know others here who could support me, when you go through such times, it's because you can feel the protection around you. Because despite the difficulties you're facing, somehow you always get through, and you always feel in your life that there is a light there at the end that you're going to get to. Because of that, you get through it and grow greatly in the process. So at this particular age of 24, Nanjo Tokimitsu was going through the great test of his life at that time. Thank you, John.
And as for you demons, will you cause this disciple of mine to suffer and swallow a sword point first, or embrace a raging fire, or become the archenemy of all the Buddhas throughout the universe and in the 3 existences of life? How terrible this will be for you. Now, Will you cure this man's illness immediately, and hereafter give him your protection instead, in this way escaping from the grievous sufferings that are the lot of demons? Or do you prefer to have your heads broken into 7 pieces, and after your death to fall into the hell of incessant suffering? Bear what I say in mind, and do not forget it. If you ignore my words, you will regret it later.
This is one of my favorite paragraphs. It's really terrific, isn't it? It's like Nichiren Daishonin's exhortation at the Hachiman Shrine when he was on the way down to Tatsunokuchi Beach to be beheaded. You remember? You can read about it On the Buddha's Behavior in Volume 1. But this is fantastic. This is the way we should really challenge our difficulties, and especially sickness, because sickness is one of the most insidious and undermining forms of sanchoshima, isn't it? Sickness tends to pull you down, drain your life force, bring you very low. It tends to eat away at your hope and your confidence. It's so insidious. But this is the spirit that sickness should be attacked. When I say spirit, I mean when one is chanting Daimoku, one's determination to rid our life of those demonic influences that are upsetting the balance of it and causing it to be sick should be strong like this. It's really attack, isn't it? Attack, attack, attack. So we have little example of this in this country so far. Our membership is small and the movement is still comparatively new. But if you go to Japan, you really see members who have this attacking spirit. Ladies who've been told they've got cancer and will die in 6 months. My goodness, they don't approach the Gohonzon in a quiet, passive way. You hear them chanting Daimoku. It's like hearing in Daimoku these very words. Get out of my life. I've got to go on. I've still got things to do. I've got to do Kosen Rufu. And of course, if the person is so sick that they haven't got the physical strength to chant in that way, then you ask them to chant inside them with the same spirit. And everyone else that's surrounding them chants in this way. Just the same as Nichiren Daishonin sent Daimoku with this spirit to Nanjo Tokimitsu. We have to learn to do this. To be honest, with a few exceptions, we've no idea how to do it. But we have to learn. So there are certain really courageous people who have overcome, amongst our membership, real serious illness. And I believe their spirit was like this. This is the only way. So sickness can very easily seem to become, inevitable, or like a part of your life. Especially slow-moving sicknesses. They're sort of insidiously draining you. You can get used to walking about arm in arm with it. So this is most dangerous too. This is taking life as second best, isn't it? Or I'm always going to suffer from these, varicose veins. I don't know why I chose varicose veins. I haven't got them. But you know what I mean. So that is also dangerous, let alone those fatal sicknesses that are fast-moving like leukemia and cancer. We have to get those demons, that devilishness, out of our life. With this sort of spirit we chant to the Gohonzon every day. People who've got cancer 5 hours a day, 10 hours a day. That's the spirit. Then they will overcome that cancer and live. But if they think they can do it with 10 minutes Daimoku, after breakfast and before they go to bed, of course it's not enough. Cancer's a fast-moving evil force. But naturally, all sorts of things play to help that negative force. As I say, we feel we can do nothing about it. Or fear, pure fear, can put us into hell and take all our life force away. A feeling of hopelessness. All these things are so dangerous. They're all part of the way in which this demonic force of life works. So this paragraph is precious. Please never ever forget it. If you get sick, this is your passage, the one that is your treasure. If you know someone else who is sick, give that treasure to them. This is the way to do it. And of course, to overcome doubts, that's why at the beginning of this Gosho Nichiren Daishonin is trying to rid Nanjo Tokimitsu's mind of any doubt that he may have about the validity of the Gonzen, the power of the practice, and the benefits and advantages that can be contained through practicing, how one can change one's karma. So in every respect, this is an incredible Gosho, I feel. And I hope from today, none of us, including me, ever forget it and turn back to it when we're in a similar situation to Nanjo Tokimitsu. So thank you very much indeed for listening. Many thanks. Thank you. Just one thing I would like to tell you about, because I know you'll be delighted, and that is that the song which has been selected as the SGI song for the whole world is Huey Burns' song Towards the 21st Century. Well done, Huey. That's fantastic news, isn't it? Such a great song, and we just got the news yesterday morning. So thank you, Huey, very much. I know that was based right on your Daimoku and nothing else, that song. And it's got there, and it's going to be sung by everyone now around the world. Thanks awfully. Okay, many thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. Great. Good.
Good job. Better do this now. Just 2 announcements.
Oh, yes, okay.
Excuse me, everyone. Could I just have your attention for one moment? I've just got 2 announcements. Sorry, it won't take a minute. The first one is about the Abibima group, and I'll read it out. The Abibima group are celebrating their 6th anniversary on Saturday, the 16th of July, at Scotney Hall, Sharratt Street, London SE15, off the Old Kent Road, New Cross End. Entertainment and refreshments of the Afro-Caribbean cultures, starting at 3:30 Gongyo. So if anyone's interested, could they please see either Kwasi, Eddie, or Spence Muirhead. That's Kwasi, Eddie Capone, or Spence Muirhead for the Abibima group. The second announcement is for the Lilac meeting. There's a Lilac meeting, Richmond Centre, on the 8th of July at 7:30 in the evening. Lilac meeting, the 8th of July, Richmond Centre, 7:30 in the evening. Thank you very much.
16th of July. 6th anniversary. Great.
Keep the flag of coals and wood flying in your heart. friendship molded now can never be torn apart. The stage is set, the time is right for the battle to begin. With hearts of gold and will of iron, let's challenge, advance and win. Together we can scale the heights, together we can win the fight. Together we can prove the right and on to victory. Let's keep the promise that we made and change our destiny. United we can pave the way for all men to walk free. Ahead the mountains steep and hard, we know the road is long. By the year 2001, we'll be 80,000 strong. Keep the flag of Causton flying in your heart. Bonds of friendship molded now can never be torn apart. Keep the fire burning bright, burning through the darkest night. Together we can win the fight and on to victory. Keep the flag of Causton flying in your heart. Keep the flag of Causton flying in your heart. Keep the flag of Causton flying in your heart. Keep